and welcome to We Women Want. This is our weekly show where we discuss women's issues, we celebrate the winners, we find support for those who need help and solutions. But today I have a very special panel with me. Today is the day where we look inwards and also do a bit of flashback, for it is throwback time, and I have with me a panel of anchors who were there from the Doordarshan days. Yes, when it all began. So they're going to tell us about the good old days, what it was like then, and what they feel about the changes they see now. Joining me on the panel today is Usha Albuquerque, Komal GB Singh, Reeni Simon, Sangeeta Bedi, and Mayuri Agarwal. All faces you've seen on TV, grown up with some of them, you've seen TV changing, they've seen the changes that have been brought in also. So, first of all, welcome to this conversation, and I'm so happy to have all of you on the show today. And Usha ji, I'd like to begin with you first, your memories of what it was like in the olden days. For instance, I've noticed most of you all have worn saris, which is one reason why I also wore a sari. Was that the dress code? Were you told what kind of a particular sari to wear, a certain kind? What was it like?
I don't think we were told anything.
Those were the days.
Yes, it was just expected of you. And those were the days when we were wearing saris because that was more formal. And we wanted to look good on camera, so we did that. And you mentioned good old days. I'd like to say that those were really good old days. I really, when you think back about it, when I see television today, I really think that those were the good old days. That's when you got real news. And we felt good having to deliver that. So I think it was a different era.
So how was it like, Komalji, the news-wise? There was you were given a script that had to be cleared by the ministry. I mean, or was it something? How did the news happen?
No, not by the ministry. We had an editorial team in the newsroom, so you had an editor, and of course we were given a script. But when you talk, Priya, first of all, thank you so much for inviting us here. And we've had this opportunity to be together also. So it was straitjacketed in the sense the news was given to us. It was written by an editor. When I started reading, which was 1977, the visuals were very few. Doordarshan didn't quite have the infrastructure. So we had a lot of copies. So we read and read and read. And the visuals were, and we were black and white at that time. So the infrastructure was limited. And we dressed according to what we thought was okay. We had no playback, at that time. So we really couldn't even monitor our own bulletins or anything. And so it was a question of, well, you sink or swim. But, there were very challenging times, but the family of newscasters and the editors and the production assistants and the producers, I mean, we really worked together as a team and delivered our very best under those circumstances. And I would say the key word was we had almost no technology compared to today. Really no Google, no nothing, no net.
Teleprompters?
Teleprompter came in much later, and I was fortunate to read the first bulletin on the teleprompter.
Oh, really?
Yes, it was several years later. And that was possibly the first technology,
That was brought into the newsroom.
Yeah, and it went from local to national, national to color, and then color to teleprompter.
Black and white days. I want to talk to you about that also in the next round. But Reeni, your first impression of, what you remember from the days then, and
black and white.
Black and white. You were there, black and white time?
Yes, I began.
So
in
we have
84.
people here from the 70s onwards,
yeah.
right?
So black and white. Black and white changed to color in 82 when we had the Asian Games. Yeah. So I joined in 84, but not entire telecast of Doordarshan was in color. So you had the Parliament News, which was still in black and white. You had the main news, which was in color, but the rest of the bulletins and sections of the programming was in black and white. So we had both things. But talking about teleprompters, as Komal mentioned, I mean we had the scratch board of teleprompters where you had a camera on overhead taking your script as it is, not the fancy technology that you have today where you type in your script and it comes and people can edit it while they're on air and things like that. So yeah, I mean technology wise we've seen it evolve. We've managed to run with the rabbit and run with the horses, as it were. So in that sense, I think the newsreader was someone who was capable of adapting to whatever was thrown at them. So, you had a script that was there, but you were expected to know your stuff before you went in to read that script, so that you could make the corrections as you're going on.
And not always.
Yeah, not always, but you had to be prepared to make those corrections. There was no way that you could go on without knowing what was going, on that sheet.
And there was no breaking news, so you were not hit by the unexpected. Or
There was breaking news.
There was
Yeah, but there was breaking news, but it was actual breaking news. Now it's, everything is breaking news.
Thanks for that.
It was a real, disaster or an emergency or something that was really, huge for it to be breaking news.
Okay.
And we used to be handed over a paper, or a board on which you had this breaking news, and so you just had to...
or it was a disaster. Like I remember the time when I went in. That was the day President Zia-ul Haq of Pakistan's flight, was crashed, and the whole newsroom was in turmoil. Nobody knew what to write, what to bring in. And I remember Suneet and I were there, and there was no papers had come, nothing had come, news was coming in, somebody would bring a paper, take it back, something else would come in. So there was, those kind of things, times when we
news
had...
was evolving on air.
Wow.
But in most times, we got a little time to go through the script.
Sangeeta, your first memories and...
I'll take up from where Rini left off first. So there was real breaking news, and that was the attack on Parliament. And I happened to be on duty, and I had finished doing the bulletin in the morning, and there was a break for a few hours for the afternoon bulletin to come on. But this happened around 11ish, and I was busy somewhere else having a cup of coffee. So first they had to hunt for me, and then it was live breaking news where no one knew whether it was a terrorist attack or what. And there was no technology to help us, to give us any kind of guidance whatsoever. So there was signaling, and there were a few pieces of scrap which would come to me saying that, this is what you could say next. But even I didn't know. So it was actually evolving at the moment, and, you just took it as it came. But I too started at the time when it was sort of a hybrid system, black and white. So I read the Parliament news in black and white and the main bulletins in English. And there's one thing which strikes me all the time, which is that today, it's not a news bulletin. It's called a show. It's a show. And when we were there, it was a straight-jacketed bulletin, which didn't mean it had to be deadpan. But of course, sometimes there would be interviews. But most of the time, it was this script, which you read out to the best of your ability and communicated, and were not performing like many anchors.
So it was news, not views, basically.
It was news and not views.
In fact, today we have shows called Dangal, because, so you know what kind of the akhada politics that news is really getting into. But Mairi, your first, your memories or something that you like to share about those days?
So I started with All India Radio and then progressed into...
A lot of you are radio to TV, except
yes,
Sangeeta perhaps
and then
the other way around.
progressed into television around 1992. And at that time, the teleprompter had come in, and so it was a little bit of getting used to. But we were about, I think, Doordarshan had just allowed people to join. Otherwise, they were not taking on more news readers. So we were about 14,000 applicants, and 3-4 of us got selected. So it was very nice. It was a great kick because I was just out of college, and there I was reading the news. So I had to be in a sari to try and look older and to look more mature, and people whom I had with the border and that whole look.
Was that the look?
And I had looked up to most of the news anchors, and I had watched them over the years in my growing years, and now they were my colleagues. So it was a huge compliment, and it was a great honor to be on TV and with all of them.
That's true. In fact, just remembering the times when, what to wear, how to wear, is there a difference between black and white and color, as in what to wear?
Oh, yes, I remember I started in Madras. It used to be called Madras in those days, now Chennai, in 79 or so. And it was black and white. And I went through the same thing, audition and an entrance test, and there were just two, Shashi Kumar, some of you might remember, Shashi and myself were selected, and then we started. but then there was no training after that. You were just put
Thrown
in
to the
and,
wolves,
and
yes.
told to go. But the strange thing was then, the cameras were such that they could only take certain kind of
Angles.
Yes, angles and certain kinds of textures. So, I remember I wore a sari with those Madras checks, which I thought was very nice. The moment the cameraman saw me, he said, no, you can't. And there was no time. So they rushed to the costume room. They just brought some sari, plain one, and they just put it on my lap and put it over. And it was good to go because, it didn't show. And it was a black and white, so it didn't matter if it didn't, match the color or anything like that. So I remember that time, as being the black and white era. And then I moved to Bombay, where again it was black and white. And we were, again, because those were all regional centers where we were doing the news from. Of course, since Doordarshan started with the National, I joined the National in 87 when I came to Delhi. And I've been there since.
And you remember, Usha, there was a time we were asked to wear blue, and at other times we were asked not to wear blue.
That was because
background.
Because
The
of the
background.
chroma. Yeah, the
Correct,
backdrop.
Yes.
I was mostly told not to wear blue. I can't remember a time when you were actually told
Allowed
to
to wear
wear
blue.
blue.
We were allowed to wear blue at one point, I
So by
remember.
and large, clothes were not a major. You just did whatever you felt most would look good.
Comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, there were probably some rules that you can't wear flashy and, jazzy colors and,
And even
can't be
jewelry, I
dressed-
remember
yeah,
they would
can't be
say don't
dressed
wear
the way you
Jewelry
dangling
would
want.
earrings.
mess with the sound, I think.
Yeah,
Also.
as simple as you can be, and with the least amount of distraction on yourself.
Which I think
Exactly.
most of us voluntarily
yeah.
did that,
So you
know.
wouldn't find those newsreaders ever wearing danglers or flashy jewelry,
Heavy kind of
overdressed.
jewelry or clothes.
Except for one flower. Which
Yeah, only.
Yeah.
only.
Oh, yeah. That's the only
And a
exception.
natural one.
And a natural one, yes.
Yeah, but talking about saris, I mean, I think it was easiest in the black and white era because you could just be wearing a T-shirt and you could drape on
And any
anything,
color,
any color would
any
go,
color T-shirt.
right? But I also remember times when we were called in. At least I was called in at the last minute because I lived nearby. And if there was, some sort of a breakdown wherein the newsreader hadn't reached or
breakdown.
was not able to read or for some reason or the other, I would be called, and then I would probably be just rushing with maybe a T-shirt and jeans, and I would drape a shawl or a dupatta or something on top, and you'd get only this frame. So you get to see only this and a sleeve. So you would be good to go with just that. So
Talking of that shot, I had both my pregnancies on television and you just couldn't make out. So it was very nice because it was cropped.
Actually, I went through something similar of what Rini mentioned. In fact, I was running a fever and I was kind of at home and sleeping, etc. And then suddenly my mother comes and she says, there's a desperate call. The newsreader hasn't shown up and the producer wants to speak to you. And this was 20 minutes away from being on air. So perhaps there was some slip up. And I lived absolutely next door, down Parliament Street on Sunset Marg. So I remember, driving there, not being able to comb my hair. They said, we have a sari waiting for you. Just wear your blouse, but just come. And in 20 minutes, before I knew, in 20 minutes, without makeup, without everything, I was on air. But it was very kind. The Doordarshan Kendra boss the next day sent me this gorgeous letter saying that, it was very nice of you to have done that. But there would be no other way. I mean, of course I was going to do it.
I have similar thing
Yes.
when I arrived for a morning news. And, the Hindi news normally came in the morning before that and followed by the English. I arrived and the newsreader who was supposed to read the Hindi hadn't turned up. So the news editor came to me and producer came and said, can you read Hindi? I said, no. I said, I can just about speak Hindi. I can read and write it, but I said, I've never done news. No, you tried. Nothing, koi badi baat nahi hai. Like, you could. I was so nervous. I said, no. First I thought about it, then I said, no way.
So the same thing. Or did you then read it?
No, I didn't.
Oh,
I
okay.
have to say, I
did.
chickened out.
I was reminded
You
of
did?
this, yes. So I used to live in Swaminagar, which is close to the City Fort Studios. And I got a call. I was on duty for the English Bulletin, which was, a couple of hours later. And so this, I can't remember whether it was a producer, and asking me, "Kaun si class tak Hindi padhi hai?" So I said, "Oh, what's this?" So I said, "10th." "Kyun? Jaldi se aa jao." And I actually ended up reading the Hindi bulletin, but I could manage only 2/3 of it. Because, I mean, I couldn't read it as fast as I would have read the English bulletin. So maybe one of the key news items never went on air. I don't know, but I pulled it through somehow.
But okay, I'm going to take a break. But what I'm finding very interesting about this conversation is also how well you all speak. You know, everybody's so articulated, the voices are well modulated. It's like a very pleasant conversation that we're having. So I'm going to keep this up, but after a quick break. Hello and welcome back to We Women Want. Today we are in conversation with anchors from the Doordarshan era. We're talking about how it was really in the good old days as they were, you know. But Rini, first of all, why are you not wearing a sari?
I thought, you know, I normally wear saris.
I know,
for
I've seen
everything.
you only in saris, and I was
So I thought
I wore a
that, okay,
sari.
take a break.
Take a break.
And since I'm not on Doordarshan,
Could you go on Doordarshan wearing that?
today maybe. But
today,
then
of course.
no.
Then
I
no.
mean, there are a lot of these unwritten, unspoken rules. You were expected to be in a sari. You were expected to be in a particular way. So yeah, but you know, I mean, coming back to what you were talking about, the good old days. I'd also like to kind of mention that today you have news shows which are only one particular event. Yeah, I mean,
I was waiting to
all
see
of
what
us have
polite
done.
word you would use.
All of us have done bulletins which were hardcore news and covered from national to international and a gamut of topics and gamut of events. So it was wholesome. It was something that you would sit to watch and say, okay, you're going to make up on everything that's happened around the world. You are up to date. You're checking on things that have happened and what is the latest update. Today, no more. Today you
Today
have
it's a
to
huge,
actually
long panel
read.
discussion.
You have to actually read, in print or read on the net to find out what has happened in some
So
parts
what's
of the
really
world.
making the news?
Yeah.
In fact, most bulletins
how?
were devised like that. There
Yeah,
would be
I'm
a
gonna ask you
sports
that.
section. There would be a soft story, and there'd be, of course, the lead story, and so on and so forth. Most of the bulletins
And
went,
it was not just political.
No, it wasn't just a
No,
bulletin.
but what is happening now is that we have a half for a one event, but we have a half for sports, we have a half for Bollywood. So it's because
going
now
to
it's
spend so
24
much
hours.
time?
But the coverage
Who's
is not
going to
as
spend so much
good.
time?
That time
The
we had
coverage is
one
not as
bulletin a day.
One bulletin
Yeah, one
and a
bulletin.
comprehensive one.
Yeah.
And that's why the 9
And the
o'clock
other thing, Priya,
time
those
was so
days
prime.
we were news readers. We were not newscasters.
Yes.
Nice point.
Yeah, that was a very important point, So, and like I said, no technology. So I remember, when we used to come up with these foreign names which we were not familiar with, or sometimes even other names from India, we would just wake up, at least I would just wake up anybody at night. We had one landline in the newsroom, one telephone directory, wake up the ambassador, wake up this person, wake up that person, and then say, have I got it right, Because we had absolutely no backup whatsoever.
But I wanted to ask newscasters versus news readers. Did you, Ushaji, ever read something that you did not agree with, or were you given any views to read first of all, or you were just reporting?
No, and I don't think views were expressed. I think news was news as factual information. So you got to know about what was happening, what were the ramifications about it, and whatever the news bulletin contained. If there were visuals, well and good, because then that would come up with its own commentary. Otherwise, you just read it, and then the pictures came on.
I think the
But
key
by
word
and
was
large-
being unbiased. None of us had prejudices. None of us
Showed your-
portrayed those biases. So you were expected to be neutral. So even if you got news that you did not agree with, or a political party that, or news about a political person that you were not in, consonance with, you did not convey it, not even in your tone of voice.
Yeah, that's.
Or in what you said,
Yeah. So,
in any manner.
And after every bulletin, we had a meeting
Because
about
yeah.
our,
Oh, really?
our news.
Tell me about that.
What's that?
The meeting which was held with the
Editorial
with
staff.
the editorial staff.
That was not
which was
about
internal.
that wasn't about
Not
your
about
opinion
us.
about the
Yeah.
news story.
Yeah. Oh, you
But
didn't
that
have
was
that?
just to dissect the production.
Just to dissect
and
the production and the whole,
In fact, I think
presentation.
I would have liked a little more of our own inputs into news in the sense that we really, as Komal rightly said, we were news readers, not news anchors. So
But
we
over
weren't,
the years,
we
that
weren't
changed.
part of the news production team. So we didn't know, okay, this is the way it was.
Editorially, we had absolutely
Yeah,
no
but I
input.
think that changed over the years, and in the latter years, by which time you all had started reading less and less, a lot of the people who were in the newsroom were involved in the
production.
making of a bulletin. So you did have people who were also correspondents. You had people who had also written a story, or had perhaps covered that particular event and had hardcore knowledge about what had actually happened, and hence formed the story. So things have evolved, things have changed over time. But yes, I mean, post-production meetings that were held were more about quality and what could have been done better,
Not content.
not critical of your opinions or somebody else's.
But was there also a gender bias, Mayuri and Sangeeta? Did you people...
I would think the other way around. Most of us were female.
yeah, that's the good
Yeah.
part. But
No, I don't know about gender
But
bias,
that's
we
about
had,
presentation.
there
But
was
when-
also a time when we had two newsreaders doing
Yes.
one
Yeah,
bulletin.
Yes.
yeah.
So you would have a male and a female, or
No,
a
but
female
there
and a
were-
female.
no, but there were
also.
two
They
women
would
also.
try. They would try to
Try
keep
and
it
have
female,
both.
male and
Also.
female.
Yeah.
But this is as far as our presenters are concerned. But otherwise, if you looked at the production teams or the editorial, of course, it was dominated by males.
by men.
Yes.
But
Maybe
Priya,
still
that
is,
time,
don't know.
I do want to mention for me, for instance, personally, when I had started when I was well into reading the news, I became, I have to say, I became less and less interested because they were not my words. And meanwhile, one had already started emceeing on stage, reporting. So I used to keep telling Didi. So Didi says, yeah, well, do reporting assignments. I said, for sure. And then, the live commentaries came up and the festivals of India abroad came up. And then I traveled with the president to 3 countries. So all that was so creative that I found myself willingly, weaning myself off news and going into areas where I could use my own words.
Yeah, actually, how you all evolved is also something that, I've seen Rini also, so many we've done together events and stuff like that.
Right.
The fact that, you could also express your views, has that ever happened in Doordarshan while you were there?
Well, not on
Did you see
air
that
as much
transition?
as not on air as much as off air. You would have a banter with your producer. You would have a banter with your editor, and say that, hey, can you word this way, because it kind of gives me this impression. So yeah, there have been times when editors are willing to look at your point of view and take in your point of view as well. But I think a lot of us had our grounding in radio. And so by which time the interaction between an editor and a news reader had become much more than what was prevalent in Doordarshan. So with that background, when you came on to Doordarshan, the editorial side was also willing to kind of listen to your point of view.
Also, yeah.
Because they knew that, okay, you have worked on bulletins before, you've reworded it, you've worked on your own sheets of paper, and are willing to kind of let you have that little liberty to be able to reword it.
But I would like to mention, sorry, Priya, there was so much camaraderie in our newsroom. Right from when one started till the end, the producers, the production assistants, amongst us.
It was a team.
We were friends and we still are.
Yeah.
But which is a good workspace.
Yes.
But Mayuri, were you there when the private channels also were beginning?
They were just starting.
Yeah. So how did you feel the difference between the two, or did you?
No, by the time the private channels actually kicked off, that was I think 2002-03. I was leaving Doordarshan around that time. So 8-10 years on Doordarshan, and I moved on to something else.
But interviews had started on Doordarshan at that time.
No, when we were reading, we were still just reading the.
You mean as
bulletin.
part of the news interviews?
yeah.
Oh, no, I don't think so.
No, I don't think so.
No.
There was always interviews happening otherwise, of course, but not as part of the bulletin.
So the bulletin was just the news bulletin, but Doordarshan also started doing discussions.
Doordarshan
Always
always
did.
started.
They always had.
I think Doordarshan
was
had
not
a
Krishi
lot of
Darshan, huh?
no. Doordarshan had a lot of material, and a coverage that had dedicated programs for women, for entrepreneurs, for business, for art, for culture. So there was plenty of work as far as creativity is concerned. I mean, like Komal said, you would anchor another program or a show. News was not a show. And also another thing that you have
And
to
that
remember.
is what is missing in today's TV. That's
No,
the
also
point.
you have to remember that none of us were employees of Doordarshan.
We were all freelancers.
We were all freelancers.
Except for Meenu and Salman.
Yeah.
Meenu, Salman.
So we all had
Shobana.
careers and we all had other stuff
Acha,
to do.
Okay, okay.
So when we came in for news, it was specifically for news.
And the news, actually, what came on the news was the responsibility of the editor and the producer. We were not responsible for what got said. We
For
were
the
just-
content.
But
We
that is
weren't
even
responsible
today. The editorial
for the content at all.
decides. It's not the anchor really who decides. It's the senior.
But
person
you're
who
the
gives
face.
you the
You're
line.
the
But
face
you're
of-
the face
yeah,
who reads it.
you're the
And,
face.
and some read it with great delight.
And you interact with people on the show, you know.
And you ask the questions
Yeah,
that
yeah.
And then
lead
you
to a
start
certain
doing
answer.
your own thing like Komal was doing or Rini. And then I also started doing a lot of television programs. I was producing, directing some television programs.
We all
So
started
that's-
doing our
We
own
all started doing that, and
I
that's
did
the
a
way one
series
did
of
it.
interviews.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to now, been told is we're out of time, so I'm going to end this conversation right now. But stay with us because we're going to try and meet up with everybody again and have another conversation because there is lots to be said, lots to discuss. But for now, that's it.
Thank you, Priya.
Thank you.
Thank you so
for having
much.
us.